There we go. Thank you, Allison.
You're welcome.
So the chat box is coming up. So when you look at that chat box and you look at our screen and you think about your life today on a scale of cat, how are you feeling? Open up that chat box and give us a number about how you're feeling. Oh, we see a lot of numbers coming up here. I hope no one's feeling like 6. 6 looks like he's already having quite a bad day. And I hope we've passed on past 9, but I must tell you this morning, I felt a little bit like 9 because it felt a little cooler and I was all cuddled up in my bed. I felt a little bit like 9 when I first got up. So let's see. I'm not sure which is the best, but I know that you have a lot of different feelings and we want to acknowledge all those and we want to have time for us to talk today. So what are we doing? Okay, here we go. Allison has put in an attendance link in the chat box, and Amanda Turner has made the magic happen on this attendance link. If you sign in, then you're going to get an ELA certificate for today and for your 1 hour. And if something happens that doesn't work, you know how to get in touch with us and make that happen. We always begin with this, and Allison always usually does this, but we're going to move on because we know you've got a lot of other meetings to go to. But we just want to remind ourselves we're in a special time, and we give each other grace. Just like I couldn't get that to work a few minutes ago when Allison jumped in. That was a perfect opportunity for her to give me some grace on that instead of rolling her eyes at me. Not that she's ever done that before. But that, for those of you that don't know, we're a mother-daughter team, so that makes that even more fun. But so we do appreciate that we are living in a time with a lot of uncertainty, and in fact, we're going to move on because that's part of what we're going to talk about today with our presenters. So today we're going to remind ourselves of these goals and why we were here. The Department of Education and the Governor's Office of Early Childhood gave us an opportunity to really dive deep into these competencies. And Elizabeth Brown, the Director of Instructional Services at Bowling Green City Schools, she's going to be with us today, and she's going to be going back talking about some things around Competency 1. And Elizabeth really did a fine job this spring showing us their plans and where they were going. But we know about plans. We know what happens. Things happen. So things need to be revised and changed. And she's going to talk about that in our current environment. Maybe some of these things would have changed anyway, but certainly, you know, with hybrid instruction and lots of other things going on. So then we're going to also hear from Jennifer Hawkins. She also was one of our presenters from the spring, and she did a fine job. She was talking all about instruction, and she's in a virtual environment totally now, and she's going to show us some things, some tricks of the trade and what's working and what she's learned. And so that's really where we are today. We're about what have we learned? And they're going to do the talking. I am not going to do the talking. So, but I do want to remind you of something. When they are talking, you can access your chat box. I know you know that when they're sharing. Please write in the chat box things that connect to you, that maybe you might be feeling the same thing, you might be trying the same thing, or you might have questions for them. And then a third thing that might happen, you might go, aha, this makes me think about this. The next time we have a network meeting, I want to be sure we talk about these. So please put all that in the chat box as our folks begin to talk. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to you, Elizabeth.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can, let me move Jamie out of the way there. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope someday that I like how you guys are a mother-daughter team. I hope that's in my future someday. So kudos to you all. But so I'm just going to give you a quick update. I felt like when we were in February, our district had this amazing momentum going with the new standards. We had these communities of practice across the district that were meeting very frequently. And then of course COVID happened, and we did a lot of virtual work from March to May. And as someone told me this week, at the time that was the worst experience ever, but I'm so glad we did it. So and we did a few things over the summer in small chunks, but it has been almost disappointing that we couldn't keep going. And so to know that some good things have come out from the standards alignment that we started has been great. And there's a lot of enthusiasm for keeping it going. So real quick, what's happened since January to now outside of the meetings? I have found that our teachers are using the new maps. Now, they are struggling a little bit in some parts of usage, and I'll talk about that too, but I've really found that they're using them. Some of the things they've said to me is, this is actually the one thing I can consider concrete or a focus, because as we know, in the COVID world, everything changes, but the maps have really helped them. We've encouraged them to make sure that the power standards are their focus, and then go back to the sub-skills that you need to attain those power standards. But we're saying, if that's all you can fit in, and I guess I should back up and say, we see our students 2 to 3 days a week in person, and then we have virtual students as well who attend every day in a separate virtual academy. So our teachers are really only seeing their kids about half time. So that's why we focused on the priority standards. But several teachers have said, like I said, it gives me a focus. It's something concrete I can look at. It keeps me rooted when I really have no idea how I'm going to get them to the end of the year. So I'm hearing a lot of positives about them. And then I think one of the things that's going well, and it's also on the struggle, is that there's a lot of give and take with the pacing, because we are only seeing our students about half time if you're in person. And we've added a lot of resources to a in-house curriculum page that, when I say we've added a lot, they're very streamlined. It's what you need to be successful right now. And sometimes I wonder if when I put things out there, do people actually look at them? And I found that they are going and looking at them and using them. So that's really good. I think in the long run, they're feeling like, surprisingly, that because the numbers are low, when they see so we have about 70% in person. So you're seeing about 35% a day of your kids, I guess. They're surprised at how much they can do with the smaller numbers. So at first they thought, well, I can't get through the pacing. And some are saying, well, actually, I'm getting much further than I anticipated. No, it's not like seeing them every day, but they're getting further than they thought because the numbers are small. And then I think something that I didn't realize was going well till I asked around the last few days, because I just wanted to make sure I was accurate in my perception of their use. I've been sending out a message of grace for yourself. So it kind of goes back to Maslow. I've been talking about, you cannot expect the same of yourself in these times. And there are teachers that are trying to be the same teachers they were if they saw their kids full time. So I'm trying to say, you have to give yourself grace and be patient and adapt to the new normal. And we've talked about how, while this is a horrible situation, you can have hope in knowing you can learn the new standards this year at a different pace. You can think about them differently. So we're trying to really focus on that, to have hope and to take care of yourself. Now, what we're not there on yet is, again, the pacing and the hybrid. So we're making a lot of notes, and I'm encouraging them to, because the curriculum maps are theirs and they're always dynamic. They're not ever going to be set. As we grow, those pacing guides and those maps have to grow with us over the life of these standards. And so we're still not quite sure on pacing. Some are a little bit ahead, some are a little bit behind, and it makes them nervous. What we're not there yet on is the fear of the test, and will the power standards be enough? So like I asked this week about our virtual students, would they need to take access? Yes, they will need to schedule a time to come in and take access, I've been told. Well, some of them won't come in because we've seen that some of our families are very fearful of getting out. So there's a fear of, what if I don't have the students ready for the access test or K-Prep? Another thing we're not there on yet is we purchased a new reading series this year for K-5. And so they're kind of biting off those with the new standards. And we also switched from STAR to iReady. So I'm also talking about having grace for yourself there with a lot of new things, and pick one, get really good at it, then add the next one in. You know, you can't do it all at once and do COVID, and you really can't do it all in a real year. So I'm trying to encourage grace and focus on one thing at a time. And then last, there's some confusion about how do I really know what they have in terms of previous knowledge that I can build off from the old to new standards. There's just some concern about how the standards, particularly in science and social studies, you know, they build on each other. And can I know that the students have enough knowledge to move to the new standards? Hope that makes sense. But I do want to throw in 2 innovative ideas that we have principals doing. One of our principals has taken this picture here at the bottom. It's similar to our curriculum map. And they are spending every PLC talking about which power standards you're teaching. And it has created some fantastic conversations. And they do this about every 2 weeks. They sit down and say, what have you accomplished? Where do you think you are in pacing? And then the other is, we have some schools that are starting small groups of students who need additional assistance. And I don't know if Corey Twyman's on here or not today, but he's bringing in students for 90-minute small groups, and he's managed to free up some teachers at TC Cherry to work with small groups of students for 90 minutes that need additional assistance to keep up. So I love that we have some great innovative principals who are trying to make this what's best for their students. So that's all I have to share. I think there's some questions, but I'm not looking at the questions, or there's some things in the chat.
I think one question is, Sarah Johnson asked, which reading series are you using?
We adopted McGraw-Hill's Wonders for K through 5, and we've added in the special education piece as well.
I'm curious about something, Elizabeth. I put this in chat myself. It's interesting to me that it makes sense to me that you said they could work through more of the curriculum with a smaller group. That makes a lot of sense. But then it made me wonder, are they using different strategies for teaching? Is that part of what's doing that? Is it just a sheer number, or do you know? I was just curious about that. And one reason I was curious about it, I was on a call with Terry Stice in a group, and they were talking about how one thing positive about COVID is that we really might learn some new strategies, and using new strategies in a different way. So I was just curious.
Yes, I think strategies are a little different, but I really think it's the small class size. So like, we've got some classes that are 5, 6 students all day long, and then tomorrow you might have a group that has 14. So I think, but there's fatigue so what we do is, whatever you do on Monday, you repeat on Tuesday. So there is a fatigue to that has set in of repeating what you're doing. So I think Warren County's doing it different. You watch whatever's happening on Monday and pick up on Tuesday. And I don't know what others are doing, but I think it's like they're all having small group. And I think they're using small group strategies more than they have in the past, which is differentiation if you really think about it.
Sarah had a question about providing transportation to students coming in on hybrid day. Sarah, do you want to mic on and ask about that?
Sure. Thank you for sharing. I was just curious, when you're bringing in small groups of the hybrid students, are you providing transportation to those kids to come?
Yes, and I don't know if Corey's on here and he wants to elaborate, but so like, I think the purple group are students that require transportation, and the gold group are students who walk or have car riders. So it's 2 days a week. But I know that there are other schools about to start this. They're all in different stages of planning, and we are providing transportation.
Okay. We have been, we just started using, or I guess collaborating with Curbside Ministries this week. And so we're taking kids are walking there for small group instruction. And so we were looking at other places in the county to do this, and whether or not we provide transportation or not, and how could we meet the needs. So thank you.
We're working on another project with some EL services to parents from an outside agency, and they want to partner with us, and the students would walk over to BGLC to be served as well, and we could serve them. But we're not ready to bring parents that we're not sure about to our campus yet. We're just not ready to bring in extra bodies for contact tracing. But maybe we can do that in the spring.
Yeah, same with us.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So Elizabeth, I have something that kind of connects to that contact tracing thing you were speaking about. And you were speaking about the, KDE saying that our EL kids are going to need to have the access testing, and then would they have to come into the school building for that? So I wonder if that's something GREC might, how GREC sometimes can kind of come together with a letter and to the department jointly and say that, this is something that needs to be looked at, because some of these kids, if they are vulnerable, they really can't come in. So, I mean,
as the parent of a vulnerable child, I can tell you, while both of my children are doing virtual school, I would be more comfortable with my older child that's not vulnerable going into the high school, because I can trust him. I couldn't trust Jonah because he doesn't understand to follow the guidelines, and there wouldn't be an adult that's used to working with him there. So I would be very hesitant to send him to the school for testing. So I do think your idea, Jamie, of sort of writing a letter to GREC as GREC, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I just wondered about that, because the whole notion, sometimes they'll write a letter to the commissioner and just say, would ask you to consider, and maybe it's just something, I don't know, we throw that out as an idea, but I know.
What I was told is it's a federal decision. It's out of KDE's hands.
Out of their hands.
For access.
Okay.
And I'm sure, based on some other conversations, that they're going to say that about K-Prep. And for those of you who participated in the DAC webinar last week, she said the election would determine testing.
Wow. So, okay, so it's not something our commissioner could possibly.
At this point, no, it is not. Now, what we've done with some of the EL students who needed to be tested to qualify, we have taken them in a one-on-one setting to 11th Street where there are no other children.
Wow.
But we have a lot of EL students in our virtual, and I'm not sure where we would accommodate that to make families comfortable. So we're going to really think about it.
Right. And we do know that certain communities have really been hit hard by the illness, and so we can see why. So that's
yes.
I think that's an important conversation for our group as we watch this unfold and after the election. And what does that mean for your most vulnerable populations? What would that look like? Because what happens if you have non-compliance with taking the test, and how can we work together? Because we're here to serve the children. I mean, that's why we all got education.
I agree, because the non-compliance is a zero, she said.
Right. So we just need to, I just think that's realistic. We can't think that we'll have, I mean, I can speak as a parent 100% who believes in testing and who believes in education. You would probably have non-compliance on my younger child. So
yes.
What do we do? So what do we need to do to help advocate for that? And I think that's why we have this network. So let's keep that conversation going.
You guys are incredible. Hey. And I love how everyone's talking about how to bring in small group. And we do know we've always had very, very different needs, but these needs really expand themselves during this time. I mean, it grows. Thank you so much.
I saw your hand. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, so one thing that I've been doing is sharing like a support group for parents, because I know this is so stressful on lots of parents. I've been doing parent coaching classes and giving them some tips, giving them some ideas of how they can give themselves grace, because you're talking about giving teachers grace, but and a lot of times these parents have had to step into shoes that they just don't understand, and they've got to give themselves grace. So I can give my information in the chat. If you'd like to send any of your parents to my parent coaching classes, it's all virtual. So even if they're in Bowling Green, they could hop on, and it's 5 sessions. It's just 1 hour a week. I'm teaching about the brain. I'm teaching about why your kids act the way they do. And it's made a big difference. And the pause button, talking about, there's one mom that said her daughter came to her, they were in a stressful, I think it was a birthday party, and the daughter came up to her and just quietly pushed her hand, and they knew that they needed to push their pause, take their deep breath. And it was such a beautiful story that these parents, they need help right now. So if will help you guys in any way, let me know.
Oh, please share.
Yes,
Holly.
please.
Yes. Thank you
Yes.
so much for sharing that.
Yes, and Holly is a former early childhood educator in Owensboro, and she's just started a new role in Owensboro. And wow, it's such a wonderful service for their community. Thank you, Holly. So now we'll move on then, and we're going to hear from Jennifer. And Jennifer is one of our virtual teachers from our community and our network. And she shared with us about things and how they were going last spring. And now she's had a lot more experience. Boy, the feet have been in the water again, and she's there in her classroom. So take it away, Jennifer.
Oh, I think you might be on mute, Jennifer.
I'm trying to share my screen. Let's see if this will work. Well,
It always seems like it's longer when you're trying to share the screen, though, Jennifer. I will tell you this, that when I'm doing that and it's not coming up yet, it feels like an eternity, but for all of us, it's not.
it does seem like an eternity. I'm going to send you my slides.
Okay.
Just in case.
Sure.
I'm not sure what's going on.
Why don't you just share them for her, Mom?
Yes, I have them.
Weird things with sharing, so.
It does. Okay.
Well, I called you Mom. Sorry, I try to do Jamie when we're.
That's
It's
okay.
confusing when I see her in her house.
It can be confusing. Here we go. Look here. Can you guys see this now? Here we go, Jennifer.
Okay, so I'm just gonna share just like the big 3 and talk about some ways that we've addressed some things that we learned based on the difference between what we provided in the spring and how we planned for the fall. And then since Christina is on here, she can join in, and Miss Johnson can join in also. While we're discussing. So if you'll just go to the next slide, the big 3 things that I'm going to talk about today. Yeah, are connectivity, how parents connect, how families connect, and how we can connect with them. How we decided to go about what we were going to plan for the fall for Virtual Academy for our preschool students, and then what we are teaching. So the first one is connectivity and devices. So with the Preschool Virtual Academy, our primary focus.
Extra funding dealing with the CARES Act.
Sorry, do you hear that?
Yeah, I think someone has their mic.
That there was additional funding.
Let's see. Here we go.
Okay.
Everybody could check their mic. There we go.
Okay, if you'll go on to the next slide. We have lots of families that have siblings that are attending Virtual Academy also. And in Warren County, a lot of that is synchronous, like they'll have a class meeting and the teacher will meet and discuss content, and then they'll have asynchronous activities to do that kind of reinforce or allow the child to practice that skill or concept. And so what we found was there was not a lot of time during the typical school day for parents to connect or families to connect with teachers. And so we needed to provide an opportunity for parents to have those experiences, but may necessarily be mostly asynchronous activities. And then there's a lot of issues with devices and sharing devices, and because we use Google Suites, you know, they have to download apps and things like that in order to access things. So based on information that we gathered from families, we decided to put everything on a web page. So everything is web-based. They don't have to download anything, and they can access the majority of our instruction asynchronously. If you'll go to the next slide. And so we're going to discuss how. And so this is the preschool, this is what we decided to do. So we created a website, and on the website there's a slide, and there should be a link there, Jamie. You should be able to click on that link and go straight to it. Yeah, awesome. So then we created a Google site, and if you'll scroll down just a little bit, on that Google site is this calendar. So if you'll click on the calendar, it's a one-click option. So we have set synchronous activities for the whole class for every Virtual Academy student at 9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday and 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday. So if you're my student and it's time for a class meeting, all the family has to do is click on my name and automatically goes to the Google Meet. That's all they have to do.
Okay.
And then if they want to do an activity, we have math on Monday, we have science, literacy embedded science activities on Tuesday. We have vocabulary building on Wednesday. On Thursday, we do our SEL. And then on Friday, we focus on readiness and writing and language and literacy. And so if you'll go to October, if you'll just click October up at the top and click on the word time on Wednesday. Yep. So then everything is published. All of our slides are published too, and so they just automatically load to a website. So this one is a pass and share activity. There's a video. And so this is word time. It's actually language, Learning Without Tears. It's a part of the Learning Without Tears curriculum. So this is my assistant. She does a video every week introducing the vocabulary words using the curriculum. And then there's an activity that the parents can do. Sometimes there's a form that they can complete for assessment purposes. Sometimes they do an activity and take a picture and email it to us. And that's pretty much the majority of how we get our assessments done. All right, so if you'll go back to the, So that's the website. And then if you'll go to the next slide. So this is an example of my schedule, and I need to tell you that it's already changed because I'm adding individual sessions with students, because I found that not only do we have those big 3 things that we needed to address for the fall, I have 4 things that I want to focus on this year. Consistency, being available to my families, but also having time for myself. Collaboration with all the service providers that are providing services for my kids, and making sure I get all my service time in for my special ed kids. And so one of the ways that I do that is I have, if you'll notice, I have collaboration times with all of the speech kids that are on my caseload. So I participate in all the speech that I can with them and help the speech therapists out. So, and I can incorporate that into my small groups and into my individual meetings that I have with children. I have small groups scheduled. I have at least 2 a day, except for on Wednesday, I only have 1. And then I have a focused literacy group on Tuesday and a focused math group on Wednesday that anybody can join. And then I have individual meeting times, like I said earlier, with individual students where we need to focus on specific skills or concepts. So there's lots of asynchronous work for families to do, but then there's opportunities for synchronous work depending on the family schedule. You can go to the next slide. All that being said, I am, like, anybody that knows me personally knows that I am a planning freak. I'm very structured. I like my routine. You know, consistency is very, very important to me personally. And so that being said, you know, you have to be flexible. My schedule has changed, I don't know how many times since we first started, and it changed again yesterday. The one thing that I can say, if you're doing virtual, is have an open time that's available to parents, like a helpline. So if they have a question or there's a problem or they need to talk to you and they want to talk to you in person, you have an open meet time. I have 3 of them for 15 minutes at the end of the day. And if a parent wants to log in and they have a question for me, they can log in on that group meet and ask whatever they want. Just make sure that they understand that it's possible that somebody else may log in while you're talking. So if it's something that's confidential or they want to talk to you about it and it's private, then they'll need to schedule another time. But I have that time set every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday from 3:15 to 3:30. And there's only been 1 day so far since I've started it that I haven't had a parent log in and ask me a question. So it's a definite need. If you go to the next slide. So what are we teaching? Well, we're using our curriculum map. And I'm so glad that we have it, because it takes all of those standards and all of those things that we have to assess and puts it in a nice, neat little box for us. We can just check things off. So if you go to the next slide. So all of our instruction is tied to our curriculum map, and it's all based on all the curriculum pieces that we have. So we use the creative curriculum. We use Learning Without Tears. We use the readiness program, the language and literacy program, the numeracy program. We have Second Step. That's our Thursday activity, is our second step. And we use conscious discipline. So sometimes the conscious discipline activities are videos and activities that families can do together. Sometimes it's a tip that's in a newsletter, but we always address some part of that every week with our families. And then the other part is, now I've been at Cumberland Trace, I don't know how many years, but quite a while. Ms. Johnson could probably tell me when I was last at Lost River. But I've always been an island. I've always been one teacher at one preschool teacher at a school. And now this year I'm working with a team. And so it can be very, very overwhelming to teach virtually. You know, time gets away from you, and before you've known it, you know, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you haven't gone to the bathroom, you haven't eaten lunch, and you still have 5 more follow-ups to do and another small group before you can stop your day. So the fact that we are teaming together and we're sharing instruction and we're sharing implementation and sharing resources for all that asynchronous work opens up a lot of time to allow us to do more individualized instruction for our kids. and it opens up more time for us to have small groups, which has been really crucial, I think, in making sure that we address all of our big ideas or big concepts that are on our curriculum map to make sure we meet, or that we're meeting everything on our map. If you'll go to the next slide. That's just a nice little thing. Yeah. All right. So as assessment, this is one of my, this is, again, if you know me, this is my niche right here, assessment. And so with asynchronous work, there has to be some way to assess. And so we're using lots of family input for our assessment this year. So we'll have a form, for example, and on the form, there will be counting, will be the big header so that we know where we're gonna put our data in, what teaching strategies goal dimension that we're meeting, and then we'll have some developmental milestones underneath that so the parent can choose, yes, my child counts verbally, but maybe not all in the correct order, or my child can count to 5, or my child can count to 10, or my child can count using one-to-one correspondence. All of those things will be listed so the parent can just pick and choose which one. And I found with families, particularly families whose kids might not necessarily be developmentally at a 4-year-old level, it's very helpful for them to have all of those choices, to know that it's okay if my child can't count to 10 right now, that there's other levels that are available for my child. And then when we do synchronous work, when I have my small groups and I have my individual times, well, when I have individual times that my assistant doesn't participate, but when I have my small groups and my large group, my large class meeting, my assistant is on with her camera off and her mic off, and she has my assessment, and she is doing my assessment as I'm doing my instruction, because I can't do both, not virtually. And that helps me so much, so much. If you'll go to the next slide. So here are some resources. The first one is EPIC, and I think Alice, I don't think anybody's talked about it now, but EPIC is an online library system that is completely free, that kids can access during school hours, or there's a limit if they access it after school hours. And you can set them up. And you know, one of the main priorities is to get kids book hours, right? We want them exposed to all different kinds of books as much as possible. And so this is a way to do that if you don't have a lot of books that you can send home to families. When I did this in the spring, I was so impressed that my kiddos were so engaged with EPIC. I can't remember how many books they read by the end of the year, but it was quite high, a lot higher than I thought it was going to be.
We were impressed by your data. I remember that.
Yeah. So I set up accounts for my kids this year, and we just ended our first quarter. But kids actually only started on September the 9th. And my students, my 42 students, have read 550 books in a month, in a little bit over 6 weeks. And that wouldn't happen if they didn't have that tool. So I highly recommend EPIC to people. Now we use Ready Rosie, which is aligned to the creative curriculum. And it's been a great tool for us because it's, the best way I can describe it is it's an online parent tool. It's an online parent involvement tool. So you can pick a topic, like we'll go with counting again. And there's a library of videos with activities that are related to that skill. So like, for example, the activity for this week was adding ice. And so they were adding ice to a cup and counting how many cubes it would take to fill the cup. That's the math activity for this week. It's simple. It's things that they already have in their home. And then it explains why it's so important to families. So they watch the video, they see it in action. They know what the skill is. The activity is explained to them, and they're told why it's important. I don't know how much it costs. I'm sure it's quite expensive. And I hope our district continues to use it because I think it's awesome. I just got access to reports to know what like the interactions and stuff are for families. So I don't have that data yet, but I can share it with you later. But I know it's high.
It's Jennifer, it's actually really reasonably priced for a license. Each license is $250. And we have licenses for each individual classroom, but there is not a limit to the number of families that you can connect to each classroom.
So that's not too bad. So I have families, for example, that have 2-parent homes and mom and dad share custody. So mom and dad both have an account so they can do those activities. And I have some families that one parent does them or both parents do them with their children. So I really am enjoying that program that we have this year. And then one thing that I found that I don't know how I ever lived without it. I have Osmo. I use it in my classroom. I have one that I use at home with when my grandchildren are here with me. And there's a free Osmo projector app if you have Osmo. And I just use Air Server to connect my iPad to my laptop when I'm teaching, and I can share all kinds of stuff. So when I'm doing hands-on activities, like we gave take-home bags to kids, and I'm using Unifix cubes, and I gave my kids Unifix cubes, and we're building a tower, I can show my tower, and they can build theirs right alongside. I'm sure there's you could use a projector, or, connect other things to your computer, but that's something that I already had at home, and it's free. And then Khan Academy Kids, I think Dr. Evans talked about this in the spring, is free also, and it's leveled. So once the children start using the program, it levels them based on their answers, and it goes from 2 to 7. So, for those lower kids, you have something that's going to meet them at their level. And yet, if you have kids that are ready to read, they can go right ahead also. It's free. I have lots of parents asking me about apps and things that they can do with their kids at home. And so that's something that I feel like is appropriate. But I do tell my parents that they need to limit their screen time as much as possible. To things that are more appropriate. So like using Ready Rosie or Khan Academy Kids as opposed to watching a bunch of YouTube videos. You'll go to the next slide. That's it.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I always love hearing updates from your classroom, and I can't believe how many books that they've read in just about a month. From the time you went on fall break, it was less than a month.
Yeah.
Another thing, and you have let me read this from Holly. It says, "Way to go, Jennifer. I love the communication with families, teaching parents what you're teaching them what to look for." I think you shared so many great things about personalizing education. Did I hear you correctly to say that you join your children on their speech therapies and different therapies?
Yeah.
That is wonderful. That's really, really wonderful. I'm so, I know that virtual days are challenging and you're filled with many, many things, but you gave so many specific examples of how you use small group and you personalize instruction for your little. So that was very helpful to hear.
So we would like to invite people to unmic and just have a little bit of a conversation here. You know, Jennifer, when you were talking and you were talking about how families enjoy seeing, like you mentioned, counting, and they like to see those levels, and so that they could see that their child is at a level. I see Carlina's face on here, and so I'm just reminded of something Carlina said to us last spring too. Is she said, "Let's be reminded that for some families, they're spending a lot of quality time with their children, and we're really helping them see how to do that."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you really reminded us of that you're helping people that love to spend time with their children, but they maybe didn't know what to do, you know, and you're teaching them so much about it, not just about developmental things, but also just strategy too. So it's so connected. So let's just invite people to unmic and have a conversation or ask more questions to either Elizabeth or Jennifer, or just talk.
Elizabeth actually had to jump off.
Okay. That's right. She had another meeting.
Carlina said her video is not working right now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's fine. We understand that.
Yeah. Did anyone have any questions or anything they wanted to share?
I just wanted to comment that, you know, Jennifer makes this all sound very easy, and she has it presented in a very put together manner, but it's not easy at all. And getting to the point that they're at right now has taken a lot of trial and error, and still, you know, we're figuring it out as we go with everything else. But there have been so many times that there have been questions come up and that we hadn't even thought about, you know, beforehand. And so we don't always know how to answer, and we're just kind of going along. But they're doing an amazing job with the Virtual Academy for Preschool. And I just wanted to kind of, you know, jump in and say that even though it looks like it's such an easy thing, it's not at all. And they're doing an incredible job with the tasks that they've been given. And we have a lot of virtual preschoolers. I wanted to mention that too. I don't know, you know, how many other districts are serving, but, you know, we have over 100 virtual preschoolers right now. So that's a lot too. When you think about the size of the program and what they're able to provide for these students.
I'd like to add, Jennifer, I think what you were saying, like you've not had any meetings where somebody hadn't hopped on and asked you a question. That's one thing. If we look at the silver lining of this, the communication between teachers and parents. I know my guy is in kindergarten, and they use Epic, and they use the Seesaw app where he can take a picture of something and upload it. He loves that. And the communication with his teacher has been out of this world. I swear I've talked to this teacher more than I did all year last year. So I commend you for pouring into the families, because that's where my heart is. My heart is for the parents and the families, and they need all the support they can get. So thank you for offering those times that they can ask questions.
I agree, Holly. I've worked with a few parents, just actually with gifted and talented. And then my husband is a middle school teacher too. So we talk about things, but really, because you're not the one there teaching right next to them for a lot of their, obviously for their asynchronous work, totally. And then any follow-up, you need that input from parents this year, because one thing that I think is interesting that I think we need to look further at it, Greg and Jamie and I haven't talked about this, is if Daniel's hearing from a parent over and over, my child's taking forever to do this, my child's taking forever to do this, it's too much work, it's too much work, but he looks at other children and they're completing it. I'm like, Daniel, the parents may not know what they're seeing. You know, what we're seeing behaviorally is either meltdown, shutdowns, or it's too much work and it's frustration for the families. But you have to think about it just like you would in the classroom. If a child's taking a really long time to complete a task, what does that tell you as the teacher? Well, you start thinking about, could there be some type of hidden disability? Could we have, you know, all of these big spectrum of things that we know to watch for? You're going to hear it back from the parents in different ways. So how to know and listen to those comments from parents, and then think about it like we would in the classroom, because it's going to come at you emotionally from the parent. It's going to come at you frustrated, as frustration or tears or anger. You know, I mean, it's going to come at you as an emotional response from a parent because that's their child. And I do the same thing with my own child. But then to step back and think about that. So Jennifer, I think when you said you give answers there that show of varying levels, that helps, but also just think as a community with virtual or hybrid teaching to take what are parents saying, and I'm seeing this consistently, and what could that maybe mean that I'm not seeing because I don't see this child? Does that make sense to everybody? That was sort of an aha we had in our family over fall break. And it took us a month to sort of come to that aha moment. You know, and it wasn't necessarily this happened with our own child, but it was also in some of his feedback he was hearing from some of his parents. Because it's a whole new world.
You know, I think you talk about the kind of feedback the teacher needs, and Jennifer mentioned that her assistant was, you know, making checks and, you know, checking when she would be teaching synchronous. And I've thought about that when I've watched virtual teaching. And I've thought about, my goodness, how can this, because this teacher, I mean, the teachers we've seen are incredible. I mean, they're performing. I mean, to keep the attention, it's truly a performance. And so I just think about, first of all, they're just seeing people on the small, screen piece too. You know, they can't, but if you had someone else there that's able to make that, you know, even zoom in on that, you know, kind of look at that child and pay attention to what's going on with the child, boy, that would be very helpful, because my heart has felt for teachers and I'm thinking, how could they know? So that notion of the feedback. I have something.
Jamie.
Yes.
This is Carlina, and you are so correct about them being performers. I was telling teachers yesterday, they are entertainers and they are teachers. I watched a kindergarten teacher teach an online lesson on Monday, and by the time I was finished watching her, I felt like I needed to go home and take a nap, because she was, and it was such developmentally appropriate instruction. It was a little bit of a lesson, then a brain break, a little bit of a lesson, another brain break. It was dancing and singing, and it was just, she did a fabulous job, but I know they are all exhausted, just mentally and physically. And then I also wanted to ask, will you share Holly's information that she talked about in our written part that you send back out to us? I would be very interested in that.
Yes, we will. We will. Well, I know I've seen Jonah's third grade teacher, and now he has a sub because she's had a baby. But I mean, it's incredible what they both do. The substitute, what she does as well. It's like teaching at its best. It's just, teachers are incredible people. They always have been, and they've risen to this occasion. So, but I want to ask you the network, so that, because we have about 5 minutes left, I'm hearing a lot of conversation now moving towards small group and moving toward how to meet individual needs. Would you like that? Would that be a topic that you would enjoy for the next meeting in November, the third Thursday in November, which I believe is November the 19th? If you could mic on or write in chat, let us know. Or if you have other ideas, please let us know. We want this, and this network is not about us, it's about you. We want to know what would be helpful to you.
I think that sounds like a great topic. You know, and as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, even in our in-person classes, I think that small group is being utilized even more. And for us in preschool, we utilize small group a lot anyway, but even more so now.
Thank you. I've seen your notes come on too on the chat. Thank you. And I see a screenshot that, see if we can pull up this Ready Rosie data that's coming up. Let's see if we can get that to come up. Can't get that. Oh, here we go. Wow. If you could click on that in the chat, you can see that data coming in about all the views, the 1,215 family outcome opportunities. Wow. Jennifer, that Ready Rosie, you're doing getting a lot of bang out of that $250 for that classroom for that. So thank you for sharing.
Hey, Jamie, this is Carlina again. I have another question. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask, but I'm wondering if we could talk about GREC maybe writing a letter in support of holding preschool harmless with funding, you know, with the legislators. I don't know if that's something that all of our GREC and our RTC could work together to do that with that. You know, the legislators only passed a one-year budget, so they'll be back next, sometime this spring, talking about the next year. And I know our numbers are down right now. I think a lot of numbers across the state are down. So if we could get something organized to, just share out that we should at least be held harmless for not next year's money, but the year after, because we kind of end up being a year behind. Something like that, I think, would be helpful. I don't know how other preschool people are feeling, but that's a big concern I have.
I completely agree with you on that.
Mhm.
We can do that. That's something we can work on, and we can meet with Mr. Fleener, and Kelly Davis, I think, is on too. So that's something we can work on. We could get that, maybe get something that Mr. Fleener could take to the next board meeting. It
I
does
think that
help.
would be great.
It
Yes,
does
I think
help
that
to
would-
have that community voice.
It does, and I think
Purpose
everybody's
for our community.
feeling it.
Yeah.
I think everybody's feeling it, but I don't know that, sometimes I feel like we're kind of on that. We end up, preschool and FRC ends up being like slated for cuts. And I think FRC tends to be a little bit more organized than we are, and they don't end up with the cut, but we do end up with the cut, and both are so important.
Absolutely.
I mean, both shouldn't get a cut. But I think if we could organize some kind of statewide support, we have a new commissioner who apparently has some early childhood background in his history, and I think we've got to get him on the right page. So that sounded easy, and I know that's not. That's hard.
We appreciate that. Thank you, Carlina. We will do that. We will work on that. Well, thank you so much. It looks like that we're going to finish about 1 minute early. So we know
Enjoy your minute. Go enjoy your 1 free minute.
Yes. We appreciate your time. We know it's the most precious thing you have. So thank you so much. Thank you to our fearless presenters, as always, sharing of themselves. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Hey, Kelly. Hey, Allison. Kelly's going to stay on and talk to us for a second.
Okay. Do you need to stop the recording?
Yes, thank you for reminding me.